Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is praying, lighting a candle, bowing toward a temple, whispering to someone who isn't there anymore. It feels ancient, because it is. But here's the question almost nobody asks. How did the first humans ever get the idea in the first place? No one handed them a book. No one built them a church. There was no teacher, no prophet, no starting point. So where did it come from? The answer stretches back further than farming, further than cities, maybe even further than language itself. This is the story of how humans first looked at the world and decided something unseen was looking back. Let's get into it. If you want to find the beginning of religion, you don't start with temples, you start with graves. At a site called Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq, archaeologists uncovered Neanderthal remains dating back roughly 60,000 years. Around one of the skeletons, researchers found unusually high concentrations of pollen, clustered in a pattern that some scientists believe suggests flowers were deliberately placed with the body. That interpretation has been debated for decades. Burrowing animals could explain some of it. But what's harder to explain away is something simpler. This individual was buried at all, not left where he died, not discarded, positioned carefully in a pit by other members of his group. Burial takes effort. Digging with no metal tools, no shovels, is exhausting work. So the question becomes, why would a group spend precious energy and time on a body that could no longer hunt, gather, or contribute anything back? The most likely answer is the same one that still drives funerals today. The belief that death isn't quite the end, that something about the person still mattered, still needed to be cared for, honored, sent off correctly. That instinct, that a person is more than their body, may be the very first religious thought humans ever had. Roughly 40,000 years ago, in caves scattered across modern-day France, Spain, and Indonesia, humans began painting. Not random scribbles, detailed, layered depictions of bison, horses, handprints, and, strangely, figures that are neither fully human nor fully animal. Half man, half lion. Human bodies with antlers. Figures found deep in cave systems, far from daylight, in chambers that would have required torches just to reach. Here's what's telling. Many of these paintings weren't placed where people lived. They're often in the most difficult, hardest to reach parts of the cave. Chambers you'd have to crawl through narrow passages to find. That's not decoration for a living space. That's a destination, a place people traveled to on purpose, likely for a specific ritual or ceremony. And those half-human, half-animal figures show up again and again across completely unconnected regions of the world. Anthropologists have a name for this pattern. It may represent one of humanity's earliest concepts of transformation. The idea that under the right conditions, a person could become something else. A spirit, a guide, a messenger between the human world and something larger. This is where anthropologists believe the roots of shamanism begin. The idea that certain individuals could cross into another kind of reality and come back with knowledge the rest of the group didn't have. For most of the 20th century, archaeologists assumed religion came after civilization. First you farm, then you build villages, then, once you have enough surplus food and free time, you build temples. Then Göbekli Tepe was excavated in southeastern Turkey. Massive carved stone pillars, some over 5 meters tall, arranged in circles, dated to roughly 9,600 BCE, over 11,000 years ago, before agriculture, before permanent settlements, before the wheel. There's no evidence anyone lived there full-time, no houses, no trash pits. It appears to have been built purely for gathering, for ceremony, which means the old model may have it backwards. Religion didn't wait for civilization to be built. Religion may be what built civilization. The reason scattered hunter-gatherer groups first had a reason to organize, cooperate at scale, and eventually settle down at all. Before people needed farming to survive, they may have needed something to believe in. Imagine living without any of the explanations we take for granted today. No germ theory, no astronomy textbooks, no weather forecasts. Thunder splits the sky and you don't know why. The sun disappears every night, and as far as you know, might never return. A family member falls ill and dies for no visible reason. Early religious belief filled exactly these gaps. Nearly every ancient culture, independently, arrived at the same basic solution. Give the unexplainable a personality, a god of thunder, a god of the sun, a spirit of the harvest, the river, the hunt. This is often called animism, the belief that natural objects, places, and phenomena possess a spirit or consciousness of their own. It shows up, in some form, in nearly every early human culture on every continent, with no contact between them. Which suggests something important. This wasn't copied, it was discovered over and over independently because it solved the same fundamental problem everywhere humans lived: the need to make an unpredictable world feel explainable and survivable. Across dozens of unrelated ancient cultures, from early China to Mesoamerica, to sub-Saharan Africa to the Pacific Islands, one belief appears again and again: the dead are still watching. Ancestor worship isn't a single tradition. It's a pattern that emerged independently almost everywhere humans settled. Elders were buried with tools, food, and belongings. Not because people thought the dead were still physically alive, but because they believed some part of a person's influence outlived their body. That the ancestors could still protect, punish, or guide the living. This idea does something practical too. It reinforces social structure. If your grandmother is still watching, you're more likely to follow the rules she taught you. Ancestor worship may have functioned as one of humanity's earliest forms of law, invisible but deeply effective. For tens of thousands of years, religion was loose, practiced through ritual, oral storytelling, and shared belief, but without temples, priesthoods, or written doctrine. That started to change once humans settled into permanent communities. Villages became towns, towns became cities, and cities needed order. Religion adapted to fill that role. Shared belief systems gave early societies something crucial: a reason for strangers to trust each other, cooperate, and follow the same rules, even without knowing each other personally. A shared god, or shared set of ancestors, or shared myth of creation became the glue holding larger and larger groups of people together. This is also roughly when we start seeing organized priesthoods, dedicated temples, and eventually written religious texts, Sumerian hymns to Inanna, Egyptian funerary texts, and later, the sacred literature most modern religions still draw from today. In other words, religion didn't start as an institution. It started as a feeling, a response to death, to mystery, to the unknown, and only became an institution once human societies grew too large to hold together with belief alone. So where did religion actually come from? Not a single prophet, not a single lightning bolt revelation. It came from a Neanderthal group who couldn't leave a body behind. From painters crawling into the dark to reach something more sacred than daylight. From builders raising stone pillars before they'd ever planted a single crop. From every human, in every corner of the world, staring up at a sky they couldn't explain, and needing an answer anyway. Dance, art, burial, myth, they didn't arrive in order. They likely grew together, each one feeding the others, all pointing toward the same question every human being eventually asks. Is there something more than this? We still don't have a final answer. But 60,000 years later, we're still asking the same question our ancestors were. And maybe that's the most human thing about us. If you want the deep dive into how ancient dance and rhythm developed, check out the earlier video. And if there's a mystery or origin story you want covered next, drop it in the comments. Thanks for watching.